Party with your host, Dustin Rybka.
Hello and welcome to Sex Party. I'm your host, Dustin Rybka. With me on the show this week is Moëd. She is a coach dealing with polyamory, non-monogamy, and relationship anarchy. If you are interested in any of these things, or maybe you don't even know what these things are, but you're interested in living a life that includes multiple partners, okay, however that looks, this episode is for you. If you're just even the least bit curious of how that would even work, this episode is for you. We talk about solo poly, monopoly, relationship anarchy, and she gives some very, very helpful advice about how you can attain these things in your life. And we talk about the jealousy stuff. We talk about, what relationship anarchy actually looks like. And we also get into the fact that monogamy and those sort of pushing that upon the culture have maybe corrupted us and our thinking about monogamy. It's not an anti-monogamy episode by any means, but you guys are going to love this one. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Moëd.
This week's conversation.
Moëd, welcome to Sex Party. How are you doing?
Doing really well, thank you. Really excited to be here. Thank you for asking me to be on the podcast.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what you were going to say, actually, because I found your Instagram, just, you peruse on Instagram as a podcaster, and you're always like, and I'm a very, very curious person as it is, and, it's a whole thing. But, and I found your Instagram profile, and I was like, man, this, not only does this like fit like with, being a guest, but this, like, I'm intrigued the way that you put your stuff together, the way that you kind of deliver your content. And so I sent an email, long story short, and you're like, yeah, I'll take a listen to a couple episodes. I'll let you know if it's a fit. And I'm like, oh, this is a no, because this new thing that's happening with me now is the last, well, I don't know, however long, year plus, has been very like porn heavy on the podcast. And we love that. And yes, that's the direction we're heading and all the things, but we're still going to have, relationship coaches on, normal people just with like stories that are wildly crazy about dating and sex and dating apps and like whatever. So you said that you came back and you said you listened to one or two or whatever. Wait, how many did you check out?
So I listened to parts of, I have to say, two or three in the end, just to like get an overview of, it was the 2 or 3 most recent episodes. And I just thought, this person seems very lovely and easy to talk to, and these are interesting guests. And, it's an honor to be part of that roster of ex-guests. I have no issue with the nature of the rest of your podcast episodes at all.
Yeah, that means a lot. Thank you very, very much. And I want people to just realize that, sex is a big umbrella. It encompasses relationships, it encompasses dating, it encompasses all the wacky, crazy shit and whatever. And that's never going to go away. When you tune in every week, you never know what you're going to get. And this is no exception. And this is fascinating. So everyone's now, on their way to the bar listening to this, or waking up in the morning. I don't know what their routine is with my show. But we love that you have a routine if you do with my show. It's amazing. But they're like, what is this dude doing this week? So for the sake of their sanities, and so I can shut up for a moment, could you talk a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, you're going to be wanting me to shut up very soon, I think.
I doubt that.
So the question was, who am I and what do I do? My name is Ro, as you've said. I'm a relationship coach, and I'm also a trainee therapist. So that's becoming part of my practice too. I specialize in working with people who are non-monogamous, specifically more often polyamorous people. And I also work with a lot of relationship anarchists who may or may not be polyamorous. We can talk more about that if you like at some point later. But, I don't discriminate. I talk to people of all different types, different backgrounds, and I have had plenty of monogamous clients too. And I'm also a writer. I write about non-monogamy, polyamory, solo polyamory is how I identify, and relationship anarchy. And my kind of mission, I guess, through what I'm writing is to change the cultural narrative. It's a big mission. Change that to affect, let's say not change, to have an impact on the cultural narrative around relationships, because the world that most of us grown up in is almost exclusively, if not completely exclusively, monogamous, and we don't know that there are other options. And my aim is to sort of say, first of all, there are other options, and second of all, the one that you're in right now, because it's not questioned, has some issues with it. Like some aspects of monogamy have been distorted and become sort of unhealthy, I'd say, for relationship health.
Yeah. So, I mean, abundance of questions right off the jump here. But so, what would you? Because that's fascinating what you said about monogamy having some issues. We'll say that maybe people don't realize. So, what would you immediately? I mean, broad question. What would you immediately say like is wrong with monogamy, or what are some issues with monogamy that people probably wouldn't even think about?
Yeah, so I want to be clear that when I say there are some issues in monogamy, I don't have an issue with people wanting to have one partner. Like, that is not problematic. There are many 100% healthy reasons why people may want that, and it could be literally that they just don't experience attraction to more than one person at a time. Or that they have a particular desire for somebody to give them most of their time. And if they have multiple partners, then that's just less practically feasible. So that's all legitimate and totally fine to want that. So when I say that monogamy has some issues, it's more around not monogamy itself, but the systematic obligation to be monogamous and the narrative that we tell ourselves about why monogamy is better. So, for example, we tell ourselves that a person's willingness to be exclusive to us is evidence of our worth. And so if a partner is not exclusive to us, if we perceive that they're about to not be exclusive to us, maybe they're looking at someone else in just the wrong way, or they're talking in a way that we perceive to be too friendly, then because we believe that their exclusivity is so important and so representative of our value, we have normalized some behaviors that are like pretty toxic for relationship health in order to protect the exclusivity that we rely on for our sense of self-worth. So that's when people become super jealous, super controlling, looking through people's private things, telling them who they can and can't see, telling them what they can and can't wear, that kind of thing. And I just don't think that that's healthy for any relationship, whether it's monogamous or non-monogamous, to try to influence a person's exchanges with others, because whether you are exclusive or not, we all need to have multiple deep, meaningful connections in our lives to be well.
Yeah.
Study after study shows us that we need relationships to be well. And they don't have to be romantic, they don't have to be sexual, but this idea that I am the one and only, and you should look at no one else, and we should spend only time with each other, that's what I think is not good for people.
Yeah, I agree. And that goes beyond being poly or being in an open or whatever it may look like. You're right. Like when you're telling someone like, I don't like you wearing that, or I'm worried what's going to happen when you leave the house dressed like that. I mean, listen, I've had my share of monogamous relationships. I'm in one now, and it's like, that stuff comes up, but I think it's a matter of like how you choose to deal with it. And I think that I've also been in relationships, and I'm not trashing any previous partners. I won't mention any names. They're all wonderful people, but I've been in relationships where, because there was another woman that was like hanging around or, being friendly or maybe hitting on me or flirting, like there was immense jealousy, screaming, breaking shit in the driveway, the whole thing. And that doesn't benefit anybody, like on either side, which makes me wonder, And it's not like I want you to like come up with a percentage, but just for conversation's sake, right? And you are an expert and you do this and you're working with this stuff daily. How many people who are in monogamous relationships do you think who would be open to or want to actually be in some sort of polyamorous situation? Do you think the number's like incredibly high? Do you think it's like middle? Do you think it's low? Maybe they don't even know.
There is actual data about this, but my perception is, my opinion is different than the data. I don't think data always reflects reality, right? Because sometimes people aren't honest when they're taking part in statistical analysis. They're afraid to say, yes, actually, I would see other people.
Yeah.
So,
look at any political poll and you'll see that data is flawed.
Yeah. And like also people might not be worried about what the other person thinks, but they might even be lying to themselves. Like they won't allow themselves to think that they could ever be attracted to anyone other than their partner, because they're already in their mind extrapolating like what would happen if they ever admitted that. What would their partner do? How many plates would they break in the driveway? That kind of thing.
Oh my God, yeah.
So,
a lot of plates.
Yeah. So the stats say, I think this is a YouGov poll, and I would urge anyone listening to go and double check this because I am just saying it out of memory. But I think it's 23% said that they would be interested or open to some form of non-monogamy. 5% of people are actually currently in non-monogamous relationships. So it's very low amount, but not insignificant. And
so,
go on, sorry.
5% of the 23% are in.
I think those are different groups. So 5% are in non-monogamous relationships, and
never mind. Sorry. Yeah.
No, it's fine. I wasn't clear. 23% or so are open to the idea of some form. So that means like maybe we can have one night stands, but you can't have full relationships. That's also non-monogamy. So they're not interested necessarily in full on, let's all know each other's partners and have parties together and stuff like that. But I think the number's higher. I think, looking at the evidence of how often infidelity happens and how just natural it is for people to be attracted to other people, whether they choose to act on that or not, I think a lot of people have the capacity for some form of non-monogamy. And monogamy is actually like a relatively modern invention in human history. Like people think it is just the way we've always been, but it's not. So I would say the number's probably pretty high.
So monogamy is a relatively new invention in society, right? Like you just said. So how new, and what was before that, and how long ago are we talking? Like a few hundred years ago, it was more acceptable to be poly or have multiple partners, or what did that look? Because this is like, I love this shit. This is like, I like nerd out on this stuff. Like, how did marriage become a thing and why, and like all this stuff and all that. But we've talked about that on the show. But yeah, monogamy being a new concept, right? Because we don't know anything else. It's all we've been spoon fed for the last at least 150 years, I guess. So, if you could expand on that, that'd be awesome.
Sure, I won't be able to provide you with years or anything like that because it's just not.
No, it's fine. We'll just wing it.
But yeah, when I say monogamy is new, I think I'm referring more specifically to romantic monogamy, the idea that you meet someone and they're your one and only. Sexual monogamy is what I'm talking about. So sexual monogamy has only very recently become a thing that we perceive to be like proof of somebody's good nature. Like, if somebody is screwing around, they're either called a fuck boy or a slag, or slag's British slang, a slut. I just realized I'm so British sometimes with my language, so please tell me if anything slips out.
Well, no, we love all the stuff, and you can say whatever you want. You can cuss, you can say random crazy things, whatever you like. Yeah,
fucking shit. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Exactly.
There's a joke in the UK with the BBC, the sort of British broadcasting company, that you're not supposed to swear, and there was some like famous old school comedy show where they said, "You're on the BBC now, please don't say fuck or bugger." So I'm glad to be able to say those things. But anyway, so sexual monogamy is a fairly new thing because, you know, the idea that boys will be boys is so ingrained in our culture. Like the idea that men should be sexually monogamous is a really modern idea. Think about like how common it is in like Roman culture. All the emperors had multiple like concubines. All of these people in the Bible, which is thousands of years old, in the Old Testament, all these people were having multiple partners. And the only reason that it seems to be primarily men having multiple female partners is because these societies are patriarchal. I'm fairly certain if they'd been matriarchal, we'd have loads of female empresses with their, you know, harem of men to choose from. So sexual monogamy, the idea that you're a good person if you can keep it in your pants, is a really new concept. And even, you know, as little as 100 years ago, it was really well understood that men would have mistresses. Of course, they'll have mistresses. But, you know, they want to have marriage so that they can keep their wealth in their family line. It was an invention that was designed to protect men's wealth and assets. And part of their assets are their partners. So their wife's purity, their wife's ability to be a good mother and partner to them, and to not have any other partners herself, to maintain her virtue, that's a reflection on them. But what they do in their private time, in the evening, under the cover of darkness, in their gentlemen's clubs, like that has always been something that in the past was just, something that was just understood, and people didn't comment on it. We expected men to have multiple sexual interests, and in a way we still do, you know, with the way that people say that men are designed biologically not to be monogamous. I actually think it's true that all people are to some extent capable of non-monogamy, if not like actively wanting it in some form.
Yeah, I mean, and then there's like the, you know, obviously and some people have guilt over this. It's like, you know, you're in a relationship, you have little fantasies about, I don't know, the fucking guy you work with, or the fucking woman that, you know, keeps liking your stuff on Instagram, or celebrities, or like whatever the fuck it is. So it's like, we are sexual beings, right? And sex is like such a huge part of our daily, like every second of every fucking moment live. And so it is in there. You are thinking about actively, if you think about it, like you're actively thinking about having sex with other people other than your partner. And I think people don't realize that, like, as much as it sort of gets written off as like oh, that's just a fantasy or whatever. And very, very well may be just a fantasy, but you're still thinking about, you're still sort of, you know, have this thing in your human brain, in your body, that is suggestive of, or makes you horny to think about the neighbor or whatever. It doesn't mean you want to go marry him, or, you know, or whatever, you know, at least not all the time. And so I think that is something that we don't address enough, right? Because like, no one's monogamous in their head. You can't control what you think about, right? The one thing you did say, so you said, you know, the ability to keep it in your pants, sort of like, you know, delineates whether or not you're a good person, right? And you believe that not to be true. Talk more about that, because I think that is like, we're pushing on a hot button, and I hope some people are like getting upset right now, or like, wait a minute, because this is what I want to get. You're not afraid to go there, I can tell from your Instagram. So, you know, let's say somebody does cheat, right? Why does that not define them as a bad person?
Well, okay, so that's an interesting distinction. When I say the ability to keep it in your pants is proof of your like good nature, that you're a respectable person, I meant in a sort of wider societal sense, that there's this puritanical approach, particularly maybe in America. You know, like in the UK, we're a much less religious society. There's less of that in the public domain. So yeah, the idea that being able to commit to your wife or husband and is a is a beautiful, pure thing. And if you've only ever had one partner in your life, then that's even better, gold star for you. Like, you know, the idea that the less sex you have and the less happy you are, the better you are as a person. Like that's what I meant. But, you know, cheating, I do think that cheating is unethical. I wouldn't say that somebody is a bad person because they do something unethical. I think if you've made a promise to somebody and those are the terms of your relationship, and you've said we are exclusive to each other and you do that without their consent, that is unethical behavior. So I'm, you know, just because I have consensual multiple relationships doesn't mean that I think cheating is totally cool. I think dishonesty is bad, but I would say it's very understandable why people want to, and I'd always question why someone has cheated. Like, is it simply you know, animal desire? I think it's usually not. It's usually that there's some unmet need or there's some desire for rebellion for whatever reason. And there's usually more to it than just somebody's unable to control themselves.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's just that, like, oh, someone hot offered me the opportunity to betray my partner's trust. That sounds great to me. Like there's you know, there has to be something really overpowering, I think, for people to be able to do that. I don't think that people who are happy and well are routinely betraying people's trust who they love you know, without some strong motivation.
No, that's again, this is another area where it's sort of like hot button, sort of fascinating to sort of dive in on that. I think so you said it's usually an unmet need that compels someone to actually go through with cheating on their partner. So I mean, what if it feels like all of your needs are being met and you are happy with your partner, but the thought of or the idea or concept of cheating like brings you to the brink of doing it each time? Like, how do you go through? Is there like a checklist to be like, wait a minute, I thought I was getting my needs met, but I mean, are there any sneaky needs that people don't realize aren't being met? Or
the need for non-monogamy. That's probably what it is. If you feel like all your needs are being met perfectly well in one relationship and that just doesn't feel like the correct way for you to express yourself in relationships, then maybe non-monogamy is what you need. And what frustrates me so much is that people are far more okay in general with the idea of cheating and having a non-monogamous relationship behind someone's back than they are with the idea of ethical monogamy. And like the idea of having that conversation with your partner and saying, look, I love you, this is great, and I also feel that this style of relationship is not quite correct for me. It feels stifling. It feels like I'm not able to express myself. And I think that some form of non-monogamy might be better for me. How do you feel about that? That's terrifying to people. Because how many people would be able to hear that from their partner and not take it super personally because of the stories we tell ourselves about what monogamy means, right? Like your partner is monogamous with you, that means that you're so great that they don't have interest in anyone else. Like that's the fantasy, that I'll find someone who thinks I'm so perfect that they'll never be interested in anyone else ever. And if they tell me I'm actually potentially interested in quite a lot of other people, how many people have the wherewithal to hear that and not have a big reaction? So a lot of people would rather just do it in secret.
Well, it gets to the idea of it has nothing to do with you, you know, and I think that is the hard part. That's the stumbling block. That's the undiscovered country, if you will, right? It's like, I think we're like right up against it right now. It's like we just kind of found this area in this discussion that we're having in this podcast episode where you may love your partner, you may be sexually satisfied with your partner, but you're compelled by the thought and the idea of having sex with other people because you feel a desire, a need, mentally and physically to do that, right? And that seems so out of the box, going to your partner and saying, I want to stay with you, I love you, but I also want to fuck other people, right? And so that seems groundbreaking to me, because I think we have been taught that, well, if you're thinking about other people, then your relationship's not working. And I fight that concept kicking and screaming, obviously. And it sounds like you obviously you do as well. So what if you find yourself in that situation where you're with your partner, you're happy with them, but you can't shake the idea that you want to have sex with other people? What then?
Well, I get a lot of clients in that exact situation, whether it's because they have a specific interest in one person that they've met, like they've had a spark with someone new and they'd like to see where that goes, or because, you know, some people have got into relationships really young and they're 15 years into this relationship that they started in their 20s, and they've never like had the chance to experience themselves with other people and to discover different sides of themselves. And for some people, there's nobody that they really are interested in right now. They've had plenty of relationships, but they still want non-monogamy because for them it just doesn't feel right for their sexual and romantic autonomy to be under someone else's jurisdiction just because they love them. They're like, for me, that just doesn't compute. And I'd have to say, like, I fall into the last category, and it's really not a judgment on people who see it differently. It's just, this is how I see it, that I don't want my relationships to be someone else's choice. I always want that to be my choice. So the reason why I'm polyamorous is not because I particularly have a strong desire to have sex with lots of other people. That's a perk of it, I'm not gonna lie, but it's not the main reason for me. It's more that I just like, if somebody loves me, I want them to show me that they love me by wanting me to be the fullest expression of who I am. And if I shut myself off to experiences with other people, I'm shutting myself off to the opportunity to discover more of myself. And so for me, that doesn't feel loving. To other people, it does. So it really is just a difference of perspective on that.
So, okay, how did you know that you were polyamorous? Like, personally, let's get a little personal here. Like, at what point did that come up in your life where you're like, this isn't just a little thing that I want to experiment with. This is who I am. When did that happen, and what did that look like?
Oh, I'm so bad with timelines. I forget sort of ages and stuff. So I may well have said something different elsewhere. So if anyone's watching or listening who's heard me say it in another podcast and they're like,
this is just a different timeline. We're in the multiverse. We're in the non-monogamous multiverse. So it's fine.
I don't know why I imagine people are going to be cross-referencing it as if it matters that much. Anyway, I grew up in a monogamous country, monogamous parents, monogamous friends, monogamous everything. I didn't know that polyamory existed. But I still always felt, why, when I have a relationship with that person, am I not allowed to be close to anyone else? Like that, this is the unhealthy form of monogamy, excuse me. Where, you know, it's possessive, it's insular, it's you and me against the world, it's we are one, it's whatever. So that never really made sense to me. It always felt kind of stifling. Even as a young person in school, I never got into relationships because I just thought, well, if I get into a relationship, then I've lost my freedom and that sucks. I don't want that. So I just never had relationships until I was in my early 20s. And I had a monogamous relationship because I was not under the impression that was my only option. And I had a couple of them, actually. And then after the second one, I think I just thought to myself, I'm just going to tell people that I'm not going to be exclusive to them. And it's so strange because this was in the age where the internet existed. But for some reason, I just wasn't super aware of what the options were still. I guess it wasn't talked about very widely. So I was essentially practicing polyamory without knowing that I was. And the people I talked to were like, yeah, that's cool. That makes sense. I understand. Cool. I'm also going to date other people. I met someone who was poly and I learned more about it there. And yeah, basically from there, realized this works a lot better for me. And the relationships I've had within polyamory have just been healthier because it's better. It's more aligned with my values. So I'm meeting people who are more like what I need in a partner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You said in the beginning that you, maybe, I don't know if you said you are solo polyamorous or if it's one of your areas of your unique areas of expertise, and also
Both.
relationship Okay, and relationship anarchy. So let's start with solo polyamory. Like, and you know, we've had these um topics discussed by just like brilliant people on the show, just like yourself. And so, like, you know, we're just gonna re-explain what solo polyamory is, number one, but obviously through your lens, to you and your work, like, what is solo polyamory?
It's such an interesting question, and I bet if there are people listening who are solo polyamorous, they'll have probably 10 different opinions amongst them. For me, solo polyamory is about making sure that I take care of my needs, it's not that I put myself first above everyone else always, but that I'm always considering myself as if I'm a partner to me as well. So I have myself as a partner, I have my other partners, and we are all important. And it also is expressed practically as not having financial entanglements with other people. So I'm not sharing a bank account with someone else. I don't intend to live with anyone else right now. Anyway, that's the stage of my life. I don't intend to have children. So, like, for me, it's about making sure that my life remains as independent from others in a practical sense, but not in an emotional sense. So emotionally, we're very entangled. We're there for each other. We support each other. We spend time together. We're best friends and lovers and all the beautiful things. But we're not doing those practical entanglements, because for me, that's not how I express commitment. And I also find that I make poor decisions about my relationships when my livelihood, when my shelter depends on the relationship surviving. So for me, it's just been quite important to make sure I have my own independent life, so that I'm making sure that whatever relationship I'm in is one that I really want to be in. Does that answer what solo poly was, or was it a bit, did it make sense? Anything missing?
Well, I mean, I think, yeah, I think the first part, but I think, so are you, or have you been in relationships where you're with, a partner who is, I guess, solo monogamous, right? And you're solo poly. So like they aren't, having any sort of other relations, whether sexual or otherwise, with other people, but then you are. Like, have you done that before? Because I think that's come up before on a show a while back, and it seems to be a focus of interest, right? People are really were interested in that, because it's like there are certain relationships, I guess, and I think I just, like, naively assumed that solo poly, a large part of it would be you would meet some people who are just gonna want to hang out with you, date you, whatever that looks like, and have sex with you. But you are like, hey, I'm just being fully honest, like, I'm not moving in. Yes, we can have a thing, but like, I'm also having a thing with multiple other people, and I'm open to even more people. So is that a part of your solo polyamorous repertoire, or has it ever been?
So not for me personally. I don't know. I can't. You can't make always or never statements about this sort of thing, but it rarely works to have what I would call monopoly relationships.
Oh yeah, okay,
Um,
yeah.
so maybe that's why you're confusing solo with mono.
Yep.
But yeah, it's so monopoly relationships totally can work. I think I have seen it work in my coaching practice, but the only way that it can work is if somebody is 100% really okay with their partner being polyamorous, and they're just sure that that's not something they want for themselves. There's no judgment,
Yeah.
there's no lingering resentment, there's no hope that they'll change their mind, because
Yeah.
then you're running into trouble. No, and I personally just don't want to date monogamous people. I think it's just a risky strategy, so I stay away from it personally.
Yeah, well, I confused solo poly with monopoly, okay? And these things happen, and this is how
We're
we get through
learning.
them. Yeah, we
That's
learn shit.
why I'm
My
here, right? You want to ask me because I
Yeah,
know the answer.
even
It's
though
fine.
I'm the host of Sex Party, the podcast,
No,
doesn't
so
mean that,
solo.
like,
Yeah, sorry, go on.
yeah, no, there's my learning never stops. I'm learning along with the audience. And I knew that term, and that's the thing, right? Is that this is all, like, I don't want to say it's kept. Like, it's not like it's being gate kept, but it's very like,
You have to
it
learn
does, like,
the dictionary of
yeah,
polyamory.
it feels like very like almost like underground, like the terms and whatever. And I love that there are these different terms, and there's actually like new emerging terms and shit that are in between the terms that have already been established. So, and in the porn field, you do come across quite a few mono-poly people where obviously their partner is having sex for work, but then it also leads to like sex for pleasure. And I've talked to quite a few people, like, on the show, and also like at some of the conventions where they have a partner who is monogamous to them, and so it's a monopoly thing where this person's having sex for work but also for pleasure, and it doesn't, that's how their relationship works. So I feel like it's a big tent, right? You had a piece of content on your Instagram, which is lovely, by the way, and everyone should go and follow you on Instagram. I love how you take these rather complex, for the average person, whether it's a Brit or what do you guys call Americans? Yankees or something over there?
Is that not what you
Yeah.
call yourselves?
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Just a bumbling American fool is what I would call it. But yeah, so regardless, like, you take these really complex things, and not only do you break them down, I don't want to say bite size, because I think that that's like taking away from it, but like you do make them into a more digestible, like, real, right? But then it's like it's heavily stylized. You have your own style about it, which was what drew me in, the different colors, the font, and all that. So if you want to learn more stuff, and you want to learn it kind of like fun and rather quickly, you should go follow Ro on Instagram. But you had a piece of content that you'll die alone, like these things that people say. Technically, I mean, usually we hear this shit from like silly religious people, or people who are so stuck on monogamy as the only way. And they say things to polyamorous people, or people in open relationships, people with more than one partner, that you'll die alone, it's never going to turn out, blah, all these things. So, I mean, how much pushback do you get as an educator, as a coach, but also as someone who is like, having multiple partners?
I've been so fortunate in my real life, I call it, because it feels like online is real, but it's, you know what I mean? In my day-to-day, face-to-face life, I've been very fortunate to come up against extremely little resistance. I'm so lucky that my family either just doesn't ask or is tolerant and accepting. My friends have been very understanding. I have friends who've dabbled in various forms of non-monogamy and gone back to monogamy eventually. I also have made more non-monogamous friends. So I'm very lucky that I've not come up against that very much. And even in my training program for being a psychotherapist, I was really anxious to bring up that I was solo poly and relationship anarchist. And I just knew I had to. The very first week, I was like, this is an essential part of who I am. We're here to bring ourselves. And I did. And everyone was just very tolerant and understanding. And if they weren't, they kept it to themselves. So I've been fine in real life. Online is a different story, because, the online disinhibition thing where people just feel like because it's through a screen that they can say anything and be as awful as they like that's where you get the worst stuff. And I would say that people in real life are usually a bit more inhibited about how awful they are. But as you say, like, there are people who are very who have very strong beliefs about certain things, and they perhaps on some level think if they say horrible things to you that it will persuade you to change, and like maybe deep down they want you to be, to have salvation, and they want you to be well, but really I think it's more about feeling one up compared to others. They're saying these things because it feels good to be superior, and there's some need there to feel powerful and in control, and also like it makes them question, why have I led this small and contained and shame-filled life while you're out there not doing any of the difficult stuff that I had to do, not sacrificing anything and just being happy, it infuriates them. So yeah, it does happen. The idea that you're going to die alone if you have more than one partner, I'm like, that just doesn't literally, like, logically make sense to me. It's much more likely that if there's two of you, one of you's going to die alone, right?
Yeah, I feel like the math is really that was not a good thing to shout at someone, because like actually. And the other thing too is what I've learned doing this show for 3 years is that you know and a lot of it has to do with the data and whatever, but you know, monogamous people break up far more often and like far more like brutally than it doesn't. I mean, people are like, oh, that never works. Someone, if you do a non-monogamy, it always ends in heartbreak or whatever. It's like, well, doesn't. I mean, the divorce rate in America is like 64%. And out of that, I mean, I don't know how much cheating is a factor or whatever, but it seems like all the divorce and all the breakup and all the cheating is coming from the monogamous side, because you know that's, I mean, the large bulk, the majority of the population, I would say, on paper is monogamous or trying to be monogamous or whatever, and like look at the ball of wax that is. I mean, when you get to a divorce rate, you know, that jumps 2% every time life expectancy goes up, there's an issue. And so I always like kind of like to throw that out there too, because it's like y'all monogamous folk are breaking up a lot more, divorcing a lot more than the non-monogamous folk. So that, I mean, you know, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's difficult because there aren't enough studies about how polyamorous and non-monogamous relationships in general work out. You know, if it's a stigmatized group, people don't want to research it because they don't think it's legitimate. So we're still in the early days of having statistics about how much it works out. But yeah, I did a sort of informal survey of my followers, and I asked, you know, let me know, how long are your non-monogamous relationships, and how's that going? And I had people who were like, oh yeah, we've been together 30 years, 40 years. So you know, it's just it's not true that a relationship doesn't work out because it's non-monogamous. Relationships don't work out for a number of reasons, and being non-exclusive is not the reason. I think if a polyamorous relationship breaks up, it may be because one or both of them is not truly ready for it, or doesn't actually want it deep down. But more often than not, it's going to be a relationship issue, like trust, attachment trauma, but you know, betrayal of like breaking agreements. It's going to be neglect. It's going to be different opinions on politics, sexual decline. It's going to be so many different things that have nothing to do with exclusivity or non-exclusivity.
Yeah, I mean, humans are going to human regardless of what sort of category they're in relationship wise. And there's, you know, it's not like non-monogamy has no problems. I would argue actually that non-monogamy is a lot more work. It's just the kind of work, you know? I mean, jealousy is still a thing. You're still a human. You still have feelings come up, right? And I think the sacrifice to be non-monogamous is that you have to figure out what you do with those feelings of jealousy. Whereas in monogamy, you kind of have two choices. I'm going to swallow this or I'm going to just start screaming. And then with monogamy or with non-monogamy, it's like, I'm going to swallow this, or I'm going to figure out like why I feel that way. And it's not going to be easy questions that I have to ask myself. You know, I mean, if you could, you know, tell the audience a little bit about the fact that jealousy is still a thing when you're in a non-monogamy situation.
Jealousy is still a thing in non-monogamy. I'll say more. Yeah, it is still a thing. Very often people will ask me, but what about the jealousy? How do you deal with jealousy? I'm like, well, there seems to be quite a bit of jealousy in monogamy as well. So I'm not sure that exclusivity will entirely protect you from feelings of jealousy. So jealousy, I kind of would break it down into a couple of different things. It can be a feeling of neglect, you know, that prompts it. I'm not getting enough of what I need. My partner is spending a lot of time and energy on other people, and I'm over here getting forgotten. And so I'm envious of the difference between our relationships. But jealousy can also be something about that other relationship is pressing on a sore spot for me and making me feel something about myself or my place in the world. So, like you said, jealousy can be a prompt, the beginning point of some self-discovery, because you can ask yourself, what is it that is going on here? Is it that I need something from my partner, in which case I have to have the bravery to bring it up to them to say, look, I love for you that you have this person who's important to you, but we're not getting any quality time, or whatever it is? Or is it, hey, I'm realizing that I feel a bit insecure because your partner is younger than me, and I'm at a point in my life where I'm starting to reflect more on like what it means to be an older woman. I'm speaking like as
Sure.
a random example. And being able to make peace with that insecurity and to understand what it is and to get reassurance if you need it can be so powerful, because then it doesn't have as much of a hold over you ever again. Like the hold it has over you diminishes the more you engage with it. But if you look away from it and you don't expose yourself to anything that's threatening, because you make sure that your partner is sort of like locking eyes on you at all times and like never leaves the room, so you never have to think about what it's like when they're interested in other people. You never have to have those feelings come up. Then you maybe miss some opportunities for self-reflection and to become more resilient. So yes, jealousy exists in non-monogamy. I don't think, sometimes what people say is, well, if you feel jealous, then like, why are you doing it? Just like, if you don't have to expose yourself to this. I'd say like jealousy is an emotion that I think would exist whether hypothetically the world had developed in a non-monogamous way. I still think jealousy would exist as an emotion, because that comparison would still exist, that envy would still exist. But the jealousy in the sense of like, I can't stand it that my partner has any interest in other people, that is something that we've learned because monogamy is so normalized and so glorified as like the best and only option that we have.
Yeah, it's so glorified, and you're never ever gonna be able to get in your partner's brain and rewire it so they're only interested in you, whether you're monogamous, whether you're non-monogamous, whether you're an anarchist, I mean, that's just not. Again, like, we're human and we see things that are attractive, and we're like, ooh, I'd like to eat that sushi. That donut looks amazing. That woman over there is attractive. That guy has got beautiful eyes. I mean, like, we're just like, we're gonna point out, right? I don't know. Those were like 4 random, but we're gonna find things that are appealing. We look for appealing things. We look away from, for the most part, from non-appealing things like, death and rats and whatever. I mean, some people are into that too, and more power to you. I have no idea where this is going, but you can't change that. We're just, humans are wired to do that. And I think even monogamous couples, the ones that are fun are the ones that can, like, send a celebrity's ass to one another, like on Instagram, right? And have a chat about it, right? And or this guy looks like he has a big dong. I bet you take that, or what, or whatever. They can at least, even if they're not practicing polyamory, they can at least have that back and forth. And that, I mean, we've heard time and time again in the world on the show that, like, that's like a fun thing, but that takes practice too, and it takes the right kind of people or whatever. But if you could at least get to that place, it does open up so much more excitement, I think, and understanding. And you're right. Like, I think the jealousy, although it's difficult, is a small price to pay for, like, the reward of, possibly having a threesome or swinging or being whatever, having multiple partners, or maybe you try something, maybe you go to a real sex party in real life and whatever. But also at the same time, you're right, it does kind of expand your mind a bit. And just, if jealousy is the only thing you have to really, if that's the toll that you have to pay, it does seem overall kind of like a small one, you know?
Yeah, small price to pay for the freedom that you are looking for. I'd much rather sometimes have my emotions spike and have to do a little bit of personal work to like figure it
Yeah.
out. And as a therapist, from that perspective, I also think it's such a gift to be exposed to triggers, obviously like within a window of tolerance, nothing that's going to like be super traumatizing. But um we all have wounds from our past, and in our romantic relationships, they're more apparent than they are in our friendships on the whole, because those relationships more closely parallel the parent-child relationships that we had as children. So all of our attachment shit comes out in our romantic relationships in a different way than it does in the average friendship. Not always, but generally. And so being able to have more than one relationship at a time uh, just means that you really can't avoid seeing those patterns play out, because you're like, oh, I am like this in all of my relationships. That always happens. People always give me the same feedback. And so you can sort of see your patterns emerging, and yeah, like that can be work. But if you do that work, it's done, and then you're plain sailing. A lot of people feel like non-monogamy is so much work, but I guess like so is therapy at first, and the point
Hmm.
is that you heal and you get better and you get more resilient, and then you're braver and you live a bigger life and you're happier.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, anything worth attaining, anything worth getting in life, I think, it comes with a level of uncomfortability and sacrifice. And so
Mhm.
I think that this is a choice. Like, if you really truly think that you want to try some sort of polyamorous other partner, sort of whatever it is, whether it's just sexual or it's emotional or it's whatever, there's going to be some sacrifice in there. There's going to be some hard work. But again, like, you know, sitting on the couch until you're 90 and dreaming about it and then dying, that's
Mhm.
hard work too. And so I think, again, you have to choose, you have to choose what you're willing, your level of uncomfortability. And
Mhm.
usually in my experience, the more uncomfortable you are, the better the decision overall. And so that's kind of like where I am
Mhm.
with that. Not that anybody asked, but and so you also said that that you practice relationship anarchy, if I'm
Mhm.
correct. And I think that people, when I say relationship anarchy, they're like, oh, that's you, Dustin. You're just this wild idiot that you used to run around and sleep with married women and do all this crazy shit or whatever. But they also like have an image probably of you like dressed as the Joker, like blasting confetti all over the restaurant and like throwing smoke grenades and whatever. So like what I mean technically, like what I have to paint a visual picture for everyone, especially the audio people, right? Maybe that's just my like demented mind, but I think listen, I'm a mess. But I
You're
think that
fine.
but I think that people, when they hear relationship anarchy, they default to, why so serious Joker shit. So can you explain, in your own personal intimate definition,
Mm.
what relationship anarchy is, and also like what it is and what it means to you?
So smoke bombs are absolutely integral to relationship anarchy.
Yeah,
It's
purple
part of our
smoke.
credo that you gotta drop a smoke bomb at least once a day. No, so it is a term that is really widely misunderstood. I think people hear anarchy and they think chaos. But I'm gonna get a bit language nerd here because I used
Sure.
to be an English language teacher, so I'm very I'm interested in etymologies in an extreme way. So I was interested to find out what the etymology of anarchy is, and I think it helps people understand it a bit more. So everyone knows hierarchy. It means like having ranked systems, and one person has more power, more influence than other people. And hierarchy comes from Greek, and it means sacred ruler. So one person is in charge, is like sacred, and is considered to be above others. Anarchy means without a ruler. So it doesn't mean that it's chaos. Just because you don't have a leader doesn't necessarily mean that there is chaos. It just means that everyone is equal. So that's the meaning of anarchy in this respect. So how does that translate to relationships? Well, traditionally in the country I grew up in anyway, the UK, when you have a partner who's like a romantic and sexual partner, they are your most important priority. You know, people say your partner always comes first. This is a phrase that gets thrown around. And they'd almost expect that, of course, you're going to fall away from your friendships. Of course, you're going to prioritize your partner over your friend. Like, that's just what you do. In relationship anarchy, that is not the case. So relationship anarchy is an approach to all relationships, your work connections, the guy who sells you tomatoes, your sexual partner, your kink partner, your friend, your cat, whatever it is. All your relationships are, it's about your approach to those relationships, and you approach them believing that they are all valuable and that you're going to prioritize them in a way that's fair, in a way that distributes energy where it's most needed, not in a way that distributes energy according to rank or influence. So if my partner really needs me in one moment more than everyone else in my life, and for some reason I am best suited to solve whatever problem they have, then I will put them first. But I won't automatically do that. If they're just like, I feel a bit rubbish today, could you just like cancel everything that you're doing this week to like prioritize me? I'd be like, I think that's an unreasonable ask, and I think you should have other people in your life who are here for you and not expect me to like give up my whole week. So it's partly about that, but I will make the next part brief. But it's also about fully customizing relationships. So in a traditional relationship, you'd have certain expectations of what's included. Like if you have a romantic partner, then that means you only kiss and cuddle and have sex with them. In relationship anarchy, you might have one relationship where what you agree works for you is your cuddle buddies, or you have a kink relationship and you work together, but you don't have romantic connection to each other. And you completely fully customize it. You have friends who you kiss, but you're not romantically involved. You know, it can be anything. It can be anything at all. So it basically gives you the freedom to design relationships in a way that works for the people in them. It's not like, oh, we're friends and that's what this means. It's what does it mean for us?
Well, I love that. I mean, Anarchy in the UK. There you go, right there. Possible episode title. I absolutely love everything that you just said, and it brings us quite nicely to the end of the episode with a final question. Maybe it'll be a few questions, but the $64,000 question that everyone is asking themselves right now is this sounds lovely, Ro. This sounds amazing. I would like to try parts of this. I would like to integrate this freedom that you are talking about. It feels very empowering. It feels very life-giving. So, right, with all that said, if someone's listening to this or watching this, if they haven't ripped me down off YouTube yet, and they're thinking to themselves, how do I do that? Maybe they're in a relationship that's been monogamous for 5 years, 10 years. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're not in a relationship at all and they want to redo their whole shtick, and they want to start embodying this, living this more free, empowering life. And maybe you have to give two sets of advice, right? But what would you say to any of those people on how to get started?
Well, if you're single and you want to do this, do it. That's the advice. Easy peasy, just do it. Yeah. I started off when I knew words to Google. I lurked on forums and read people talking about this and learned that way. And I read books and listened to podcasts. And you don't have to do a whole bunch of homework to be a relationship anarchist or polyamorous. Like, you can just do it, but like,
just get the smoke bombs.
Yeah, exactly. It's easy. No, I mean, like, you don't. Yeah. So a lot of people feel like, oh, it's a lot of work. I have to study to be this thing. It's like, you don't have to. It's just, it might help you to avoid some common pitfalls. But maybe you are just like very naturally relationship anarchist. I think that's actually who I am. And so I didn't have to study relationship anarchy. I just found it and I was like, oh yeah, that's what I already believe. So, if some people may feel that way, and if that's how they feel, I'm like, great, you found the thing that works for you. Go and find your community, do it. Fantastic. It's a very different situation if you're in a relationship already. As I said, I work with quite a lot of people who are in this situation. Not exclusively, but it happens fairly often. And I think it's very individual because every person's partner will be very different. Some of them are very open-minded and happy to talk about it, and other people just absolutely shut down. And I would say if your partner is unwilling to even have a conversation about something that you say is important to you, then that's maybe an issue in and of itself to address about your level of trust and ability to communicate. So whether you're going to be non-monogamous or not, that's something to look into and to raise with them. They're like, I said that I wanted to talk to you about this topic. I didn't say I want to do it immediately. And we're not able to even do that. And I think there's a problem with that. That's me speaking as them. So yeah, like that, when that's the case, I'd say like there's an issue, there's an underlying issue to address. Otherwise, I'd just say like, bring it up. It's a topic that's more in the mainstream now. You don't have to say, hey, so I think I want to be polyamorous next week. How do you feel about me going on a date? That's take it slowly and just raise the topic with them and say, so this is a thing that I've been reading more about. Have you read about it? What do you think about it? And share honestly what you think. I think so often the advice we're given in a traditional monogamous context is that you should protect your partner's feelings at all costs because you're trying to protect the relationship above the people in it. You want to make sure that you save the sacred relationship because it can't fall apart. Because if it does, everybody, thinks that you've failed in some way. So people feel this massive pressure to protect the relationship and they'll do all sorts of stuff like avoid topics entirely to do that. But then at what cost? Because then the relationship becomes inauthentic. It becomes stifling. You can't be honest about how you feel. And the less honest you can be, the less authentic you can be, and the less intimacy ultimately there is between you. So bring up the topic, say how you really feel about it, take it slow. And if your partner's unwilling to talk to you about it, raise that as a potential issue that you would like to address.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it gets any better than that. Moëd, thank you so much for being on the show with me this week. I think you provided some pathways there that people can take and modify however they see fit. I just think that, where I grew up and obviously it's changing now or whatever, but like you say something like that to your partner and if there's a fear you're going to get, hit in the middle of the night with a pot of boiling water or something. And it's like,
that's so scary that you say that. It's not even a joke. Like, sorry, I just wanted to say that.
For real. Right. Yeah. And it's, conversations are, when you don't have them, then resentment grows. And especially on this kind of stuff. And, again, choose your version of difficult. Right. And, if someone's going to throw a boiling water on you, like maybe you have been with the wrong person for a while. Yeah, it might be difficult for the other person to hear that you are having ideas or thoughts or whatever about sleeping with other people or other dates or relationships or whatever. But also too, the one shocking thing that I learned is so many people are polyamorous and like swinging and like hot wifing and all that shit in secret, like way more than I thought. So have the conversation, y'all. Thank you so much for being on the show with me this week. Let's remind. I always do that. Let's tell these party goers where they can find you online, where they can find your work, where they can work with you, because I think they're going to really want to do that. I mean, your Instagram is amazing. If they don't follow your Instagram, they're missing out.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind. So my Instagram account is called unapologetically, like the usual word, but with poly instead of polo in it. I really sort of regret that name. I think it's good. It looks good written down. Spoken is not so good. But anyway, so it's the adverb and unapologetically on Instagram. I'm not on any of the other social media platforms because I just frankly can't cope with social media in general.
Yeah, it's a lot.
But I work independently, privately as a coach. So if anybody wants to reach out to me for one-to-one or couples coaching, they can follow the link through my Instagram and book a session with me. You can just take a look at my availability and book it there. And then if you want, there's no sort of, we don't have to have a meeting. You don't have to be assessed or anything like that. And I also have a growing community of patrons where we meet once a month for different events. We have discussion groups, we have talks with Q&As, and we also have social hangouts and like a private Discord. So if you're feeling alone with this and you're feeling like you're the only person in the world who is interested in non-monogamy and you'd like to make more like-minded friends and learn about it and feel empowered to not just dream about it, but make your dreams a reality, that's what I've created that space for, to empower, to educate, to connect people. And also you can find that through the link on my Instagram.
Yeah, no, we love that. Would love to have you back on the show. I think what you're doing is not only, crucial, but I think, the way you're doing it is what really spoke to me, just to reiterate that. So again, thank you for being on the show. We'll have you back soon. And yeah, we'll be chatting.
Thanks, Dustin. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Talk soon. Big thank you to Moëd for being with me on the show this week and having an amazing, interesting conversation. Hope you guys loved it. If you are loving guests like Ro, make sure you go follow her on her Instagram. Like I said, it's pretty incredible over there, and you'll learn a ton in a fun way. If you're loving guests like Ro and you want to see her again, she will be back at some point in the future, but you're just loving Sex Party, what can you do? Well, if you're listening to this on platforms like Apple and Spotify, you could leave a rating, you could leave a review. Those things are wonderful. I will read those and have ultimate joy in my life. But honestly, it's kind of a waste of your time. Fuck all that. What you want to do is make sure that you're subscribed to the show so you never miss a new episode every single Wednesday. If you are watching on YouTube, I love you. I see you. I appreciate you. If you're watching on YouTube, would you ever, or have you ever been curious about being in some sort of polyamorous, non-monogamous situation in your life? Let me know in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube and you want to make sure that you show some love for Sex Party and you never miss a new episode, what can you do? Well, you could like this video. You could like all the videos. You could leave a comment. You could leave a positive comment or a negative comment. I love interacting with you. Either way, it's all good. But the most important thing you want to make sure you do is subscribe to the channel. So therefore, that way you'll never miss a new episode every single Wednesday. As always, I'm available in the DMs on Instagram, and I'll see you all right back here next week.
Thanks for listening. The party continues next week. Click subscribe and let's make this a regular thing. Follow the show on Instagram and Twitter @SexPartyFM. Follow Dustin @DustinRybka.